Yo, what's up everybody? It's me, Don Weep here, back with What If Asta Was Meliodas' Son, Part 13. I hope you guys are ready for this part, and if you haven't already, make sure to go up to the top of right-hand corner, right up here, yeah, right where that iCard is, and go and watch all the previous parts so you can catch up. They shouldn't take too long, and they should be enjoyable, you know what I'm saying. But I hope you guys enjoyed this part. This will be one of my longer parts of the series, and it'll be covering some key moments, some key arcs. Last time we ran into Bon the Fox Sin from the Seven Deadly Sins, and you guys were wondering, how is he there? How is Merlin there, and what's going on? So we're gonna be getting into that today. Anyway, make sure to go, slap that like button if you want to give your boy some support. Hit a subscribe, all that good stuff. Just, do the good things. And let's just get into this video. This is a tale of ancient times, an era before the human and non-human worlds were forever divided. After many, many battles, the Seven Deadly Sins, an order of legendary knights, would be divided. Dragon Sin Meliodas and Princess Elizabeth would have a son in a faraway land, and his name was Asta. Asta would eventually attain his own grimoire and start his journey to become the Wizard King. So, just because it's been a while, let's give a quick recap, with that being Asta and the Black Bulls in the Forest of Witches, fighting off the Queen of Witches, who we find out to be Merlin, her underling, that being Bon, both the Foxen of Greed and an immortal, which is strange because in this timeline it's confirmed that the events of Black Clover take place after the Demon King is struck, which I'll be getting into pretty soon, along with what Meliodas is doing. Anyway, there's some other key things that I said last time, so make sure to go and watch those because the recap of 30 seconds isn't going to cover it. But let's just start off fresh today with where we left off, that being Asta falling unconscious, Bon being impressed with his captain's son, Merlin as well, and taking the Black Bulls and Asta back to Merlin, who is confirmed to be the Queen of Witches in this timeline, and was summoned here along with Bon and Meliodas and Elizabeth almost 500 years ago. For some reason, Merlin had been developing Vanessa's magic, using her power to try and figure out the answer to something, that being the power of fate. But what could this have to do with their situation now? Well, let's get into that now. Merlin would eventually wake up the Black Bulls, specifically Asta, with Asta looking around, seeing Bon standing next to her, the immortal reprimanding his temporary leader for her short notice that he had to fight both an army and this kid. Asta just be watching as Merlin's looking at him annoyed. Bon would turn, noticing that Meliodas' kid was awake, as he then walks forward asking, "Hey kid, do you know who I am?" Bon would ask. "You're the guy I just fought. Why am I alive? Wouldn't you have killed us all by now?" Asta would say, in genuine confusion. "Well, yeah, I could if I wanted to kill you, that is, at least." "Then you don't want to kill us?" Asta would say, now confused more than he was before. Asta unknowingly having attacked Bon while he was unconscious due to the influence of the anti-magic demon, which took control only a few minutes ago, showing off Asta's newfound power being the anti-magic devil mode, or just Black Asta if you watched the dubbed version. Anyhow, Merlin plays a image back of Asta entering the anti-magic devil mode, before asking Asta if he knows what this is, Asta realizing that he doesn't remember doing any of that. Bon just watching from the corner as they begin to discuss the problem going on. Merlin, or the Queen of Witches, would reveal to Asta that he actually has another demon dwelling within his grimoire, which he shouldn't even be able to have to begin with. What? Asta would say. "I'm sure you've realized it by now, but you can't sense other people's magic power, and nor can they sense yours." Merlin would explain to Asta about the magic power frequency, a difference between him and the rest of the humans from this world. Asta, Merlin, and Bon can sense each other's magic power. That's because they all are using the same frequency of magic. However, people like who are using magic in this world, who have incantationless magic, that is in a grimoire like don't necessarily have the same magic frequency. Not necessarily being weaker than magic from their world. What do you mean, our world?" Asta would ask. With him having heard about the Seven Deadly Sins from his mom had never explained that they were not from this world. something that he himself did not know about until now. This being something even after Merlin explains would confuse him. Merlin would sigh, saying that it all goes back to hundreds of years ago, where now we see Elizabeth and Meliodas walking towards the Demon Realm gate. By this point, Ban had already given away his immortality back then in order to save Elaine, but something had gone wrong. When Elizabeth and Meliodas were walking towards the gate, suddenly a crumbling of stone began to fall. This time, however, Elaine would run forward trying to save Elizabeth, Ban going after her. At this moment, Merlin and a few of the others would try to save them as well from the huge collapse, this time them being able fast enough to actually see it. Instead of Zeldris appearing or the Demon King arriving, suddenly those who had ran after Elizabeth would have found themselves warping, as they all would have been ripped apart. Those who were together being Ban and Merlin, Elaine being nowhere to be found, and Elizabeth and Meliodas, who had luckily been holding on to each other. Elaine, King, and Diane. Those were the other three who had been missing. Immediately after they had been summoned to this world, they had no clue what was going on. Meliodas had thought they might have just been teleported, but he couldn't sense any magic anywhere. None of them could. Not even Merlin, who was an expert on it. They would check and all their powers were still there. But something was wrong. This day is the day where the elves would be getting attacked, as Licht would be turning himself into a demon. Merlin thinks that somehow the 7 of them had been teleported to somewhere else, like they had slipped through reality. But how is that possible? And they had to get back. The Demon King was still there. There was no one defending Leonis. The only people who were, at least so far, unaccounted for from the teleportation that could have been there would be Escanor and Zeldris, neither of which were near or relatively near the portal at all when the teleportation incident had occurred. Vanessa, in her memories, is thinking of how she was saved from this place when Merlin and Ban were experimenting on her in order to try and awaken her dormant fate magic, the magic that might be capable of perhaps rewriting fate and saving all of them from this world. At least that was Merlin's idea. Ban, of course, isn't exactly against this, since he's not truly a morality type of person. He tried to kill Meliodas just to be able to revive Elaine, and even though Ban wasn't proud of it, he was still willing to do whatever it took in order to bring Elaine back to life. Anyway, with Asta being Meliodas' son, and Ban and both Merlin realizing it, their hope would now have come true, as well as Ban's promise to stay with Merlin until he arrived. Basically what this means is that Ban's going to be going with the Black Bulls back to the Clover Kingdom, out of the Forest of Witches while Merlin stays there. Anyway, Ban and the others would then head back to the Clover Kingdom, with Asta flying after his recovery and not being unconscious. The good news out of this is that Asta's arms are healed, so the curse that he couldn't even heal with his goddess magic because it was so deeply rooted in his body is gone. Merlin would have freely given up the magic stone earring because she killed the Queen of Witches in this timeline all those years ago and took her position. So it makes sense that she would still have the magic stone on her, just like the Queen in the original timeline. Ban would actually be the one in this version to tell them about the Eye of the Midnight Sun and the elves, with them having explained all they could about what happened before they split up with Meliodas. All that they knew was that Meliodas and Elizabeth would send a sign eventually when it was time. Or at least Meliodas said that. Asta obviously being the signal that Meliodas was mentioning. Ban would tell Asta everything he remembered about the elves, and that the swords that he has, aside from, of course, Lostvein, being elvish weapons, which would be, of course, a big surprise for Asta. Anyway, I digress. For now, the others as well as Ban would make it back to the Black Bull's hideout, with them all walking in, Ban wondering what kind of trash heap this was. As he says this, the door would open into the bathroom, as Yami has finished his eternal shit. Yami pulling himself up as he sees this weird guy with white hair. Who's this? Yami would ask. I don't know if I like your tone, Ban would say. Asta would be trying to play mediator while the other Black Bulls would just slump over, exhausted from all the work that they'd been doing that day and the past couple of days during the week to try and help Asta. With Asta's arms finally being healed, Yami would feel reassured, but he would not like this Ban guy. He gets on my nerves, the both of them would be thinking. Yami and Ban would have quite a few similarities, which would mean that they would fight often. Yami would attempt to grab Ban and hurt him, with him telling him to get out of his face, the two trying to fight. Asta was already getting scared, as well as everyone else who would probably die from the impact as the two powerhouses are going at it. As he tries to stab Ban, just trying to kill him, Ban would grab the sword, as the two are now bickering. Well, they're gonna make good friends, Asta would say. Asta would walk away with Vanessa telling them to knock it off, Yami looking over annoyed. He would eventually stop, saying, I don't like it, as he walks away. Ban huffing, saying, this guy sucks, he's nowhere near as good of a captain as Meliodas. Who the hell's that, Yami would say. Again, Ban and Yami would get back into it. At least all's well that ends well. Vanessa sighing as she finally feels like they're back at home. And with this, the Forest of Witches arc would end, with the next arc coming to place being the Royal Knights and the Star Festival, which we'll be getting into right now. Yami would force Asta to take a break from missions temporarily, with Asta insisting that he's fine, showing his arm as he buffs up the muscle. Yami sighing, saying he's not willing to risk it. Asta would dramatically ask what he has left to him without his missions. With the others who were out searching, not with the Forest of Witches, arriving back from their searches on how to heal Asta, they would all find Asta's arms to be already healed, which would be a relief for everyone in the Black Bulls. Noelle would be shocked, as well as Asta, on how so many of them had changed from their journey, particularly Charmy and Gordon. After they would apologize for not being able to find a cure for Asta, Asta would make them feel better, saying that he appreciates the effort that they all put in. Anyway, now that they would return home, most of them would begin to go back to their former lazy selves, just lying around doing nothing. Yami would inform Asta and Noelle that a certain festival would be coming up, this being the Star Festival. Finral would explain what it represents and also the opportunity to get girls there, as well as how the other teams will be showing up to claim their rankings among all the Magic Knight squads. With everyone preparing to leave for the festival, before they leave, Asta would ask Finral to go and get a few people to bring with for him. This being Kahono, as well as Kayato, and his mother, Elizabeth. Elizabeth would be delighted to be invited to the Star Festival, and also be able to see the Wizard King Julius again, since it had been so long since they had last seen each other, with the last time having been when Meliodas was still here. Anyway, as Asta is introducing his mom to everyone, Ban would walk out as he then greets Elizabeth. Elizabeth excited to see her old friend again, rushing forward, as she gives Ban a hug. Oh yeah, you would know him, wouldn't you? Ban, this is my mom. Elizabeth would be happy to see Ban again after it had been so long. So we get that nice reunion, with them talking about Elaine, Merlin, and them not being able to find King and Deanne quite yet. Some other events that had taken place over the past couple of years. After using Finral's magic to arrive at the festival, Kahono would be deciding to plan a double date with Asta and Noelle. Kahono would be egging Noelle on, explaining how she's going to plan to steal Asta from her, with them all heading off into their groups, Asta being with Kahono, Noelle being with Kayato. Kayato and Kahono, for those who don't remember, are the two twins with the dancing and singing magic abilities from the Undersea Temple. Anyway, at the festival, Noelle would be disheartened seeing how well Kahono and Asta get along. Elizabeth would take notice as she walks up behind Noelle, grabbing her on the shoulders and telling her to do her best. This being Asta's mother, Noelle would recognize that she actually can see a lot of her in herself. She's thinking about how noble Asta's mom feels. She would gulp, thinking of her own mother, as she decides that she'll try her best, thanking Asta's mother, with her introducing herself as Elizabeth. Kahono and Asta be by themselves when Kahono decides to ask Asta what Noelle is to him. Before Asta can make an answer, they would notice there'd be a crying little girl. Asta would walk over asking what's going on, as we can hear shouting from nobles who are harassing the girl for being a peasant. Noelle would step into the scene to stop the royals, asking why is this going on, and the girl would still not stop crying. Asta, Kayato, and Kahono would try and entertain her, making silly faces, and the two twins trying to put on a show for the girl, which would actually work and cause her to stop crying. The little girl would reveal that her name's Emma, as she explains what happened to her, with her mom and her getting separated. Kahono would use her song magic to spread the girl's name around using sound, and eventually Emma's mom would show up and thank them for helping her daughter and her get back together. She would also notice that Noelle is a member of the royal family and profusely apologize for what disgrace she saw. Noelle would then explain how even though she is a member of the royal family, she'll still help her hand to anyone in need in the Clover Kingdom, and that everyone should be able to enjoy the festival. Asta looks back, kind of surprised by this, having heard how Noelle was from the very start, remembering how elitist she used to be, making fun of him for being a peasant, even though he was stronger than her. Asta remembers Kahono's question and says that he does like Noelle. This decision would make Elizabeth smile, who's walking with Yami and Bon, the two staring at each other, annoyed. Anyway, Noelle would hear this answer and use tsundere mode, blasting Asta with water as he gets sent flying away. Elizabeth calling out for Asta. Asta would eventually come back saying he's fine. Anyway, Kahono would comment how the two makes a good match, which would be a parallel to what Noelle had thought in her head and said beforehand. With Kahono saying her and Noelle should go and enjoy the festival together. Asta would be wandering around wondering what the hell was wrong with Noelle and why she did that, rubbing his head thinking that hurt, using some goddess magic to heal himself. He would overhear some people talking about this pretty woman. Suddenly, a nobleman called Bauman would approach the girl for her company. If you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. He's trying to put his anti-magic sword on her grimoire, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, basically, he would get mad after the woman would ignore him. Asta would be about to intervene to defend her when suddenly thorns begin to sprout, this being the magic of the Blue Rose Captain. This would be when Saul, the second in command, would appear and throw them off away. Anyway, Asta would try and stop the captain before she kills the noble, Bauman, but before he can, he'd run into Sol, who remembers him. The two begin to get into an argument, but before the Blue Rose Captain can kill Bauman, Asta would use a little bit of his power, saying, "Sorry," as he pushes the girl aside, running forward and slashing with velocity and the thorns away, asking if he's alright. He would look up at Charlotte as the two's eyes would meet. Asta in this timeline isn't afraid of angering magic captains, since he's easily as strong as Captain Yami, maybe even a little stronger, especially now after he's been able to tap into more anti-magic, now having 3 magic power sources. Anyway, Saul would try and get back into the fight throwing a punch at Asta. Asta would simply take his hand and grab the block, taking the full force of the attack and not even budging an inch. This would show Saul how much stronger Asta was than her, with even her captain not able to take a full hit attack from her without any damage. Anyway, before things can get serious, this would be when Saul remembers something, as she pulls out a dress she had bought for Charlotte, that being the Magic Knight captain, and forces her to wear it. A lot of the men in the crowd would be oohing at her beauty, Asta just watching thinking what's going on. Charlotte would now be embarrassed, thinking she can't let any of the other captains see her like this, and is shocked when Yami and Bon show up, the two walking around the festival together, Elizabeth having gone with Vanessa and the other Black Bulls. Anyway, Yami would recognize her and comments about Charlotte wearing a dress, saying, "You know, I'm kinda surprised it actually fits you. I never think that a man-beating woman like you would wear anything like that." This quickly switches Charlotte's mood from embarrassed to annoyed, as she then comments that Yami's dressed practically naked. Vanessa and Elizabeth would eventually show up looking for Bon and Yami, and this would be when Yami would comment that he likes women who can drink. Vanessa and Charlotte would notice each other and think about how they can't lose, saying that they're going to have to win this challenge. Anyway, Vanessa would challenge Charlotte to a drinking contest, who would then be subsequently crowd punished by Sol, her younger junior, saying she should do it and show her who's the boss and why she's a Magic Knight captain. Elizabeth would break into the conversation asking if she can join, Elizabeth smiling innocently. The other two women would have no problem with her joining, as they then get into their drinking contest. The challenge starts and Vanessa passes out after drinking, while Charlotte reveals that she actually is a lightweight. Little did they all know that they thought the two of them would be the main challengers, while it was in fact actually Elizabeth. Elizabeth would have a small laugh as she then mentions that she actually used to work in a tavern, with her drinking Charlotte and Vanessa under a table. Yami and Bon would be laughing, with Bon remembering how she couldn't even handle a drink back then either, commenting that she's gotten stronger. Anyway, Charlotte remembers how her family was cursed, and in her drunk state, it was Yami that had saved her, and when she fell for him. Yami would grab the mug from Charlotte's hand before she passes out, as she then falls to the table, blushing. The match is declared with Elizabeth as the winner. Asta would notice all the people heading towards the Great Hall, cheering for his mom as he then begins to follow after towards the main ceremony. Asta looks towards Yami, who comments that they can't be late for this and wonders what they're going to be doing since all the other Magic Knight captains are going to be up there. The ceremony for the Star Warding Festival would begin, with the Magic Emperor Julius arriving and announcing that he'll be presenting the awards. Julius would explain why they are going to hold this ceremony, saying that he wishes to reward all of the Magic Knight groups who have tried their hardest to improve the kingdom this year. He would introduce all the Magic Knight captains, except for Yami and Charlotte, who wouldn't show up, which would cause Julius to be a surprise, for Charlotte at least. Yami was never to these kind of events early. Anyway, Julius would begin the ceremony announcing the Golden Dawn in first place. He would also reveal that Yuno would be the #1 contributor of the Golden Dawn, which would surprise everyone, thinking about what a promising rookie he was. Yuno just worrying about how much stars Asta would have gotten, with Asta having always been stronger than he was as a kid. Yuno actually being the hard worker in this timeline. Julius would then announce that the squad in second place was the Black Bulls. This would cause everyone to be shocked except for Asta, who would punch his hand to his fist thinking, "Damn! If it wasn't that week of everyone looking to try and save me, I know we could have won." Him being frustrated that he actually lost to Yuno at something. Anyway, the crowd wonders if the Black Bulls cheated, with them having been the worst Magic Knight squad for years, in the negatives. Someone in the crowd would say that the Black Bulls had helped them, and that they're trustworthy. Other people murmuring amongst the crowd that they had noticed that things like that were going on. Anyway, Julius would announce all the Black Bulls' accomplishments, saying that they're all true, and asked if any members of the Black Bulls would be in the crowd. Yami would turn towards Asta, saying to get up there, as he grabs him by the back of the collar. Yami and Bond then heaving Asta as they throw them towards the stage. Asta landing perfectly, as he then uses his wings, landing directly on top of the stage, as he then greets Yuno, waving his hand saying, "Yo, Yuno, what's up?" Yuno quickly sweating, saying, "Asta, how's it been?" Asta and Yuno would get into a small conversation, with Yuno mocking that Asta got less stars than him. I see you don't like breathing very much," Asta would say. "Well, I can end your free life subscription of it." This would stop when Julius announces to the crowd that Asta and Yuno are the top 2 rookies of the year, with both of them having earned almost all of the stars for their teams. The crowd would be amazed by both Asta and Yuno, as Seke would then come out of seemingly nowhere, yelling into the crowd that both of them are slum rats and peasants. Seke in his mind be thinking that he'll do whatever he has to drag Asta down and hold him back. The crowd would then wonder if Asta and Yuno had really earned their stars. Yuno would turn, saying, "Let's do this, Asta," as Yuno would reveal his full power. This would be when Yuno would then blast a huge, massive burst at wind at Asta. Yuno, if you really want to show off your power, this is how you do it. Asta would hold his hand up, blocking the attack with one hand, as Asta would power up, causing the entire area to shake. Elizabeth would recognize what's going on, she can actually feel his magic power, and Bond whistling, saying, "That's pretty impressive." As Asta would have both his angelic and demonic half unsealed. No one could feel his magic power, but they could feel the vibrations coming off of his body. Everyone thinking he must be so powerful they can't even feel it. Anyway, this would cause Yuno to tell Asta to please stop. Asta would then sigh, he says he's not really trying to hurt Yuno anyway. Anyway, after the crowd is amazed by the two, Asta would then power off, as the crowd cheers for both Asta and Yuno's strength. Both of the two, almost brothers, look out into the crowd, realizing how far they've come, from just being some poor kids out in the sticks to supporting the kingdom as their main frontrunners. As the crowd cheers for Asta and Yuno, Julius would come up behind them, and then talk about that their results are beginning to show, like what he had mentioned the first time he had met the two. Anyway, the Silver Eagles would come in third, Blue Rose in fourth, Crimson Lion in fifth, Green Mantis in sixth, with Coral Peacock in seventh, the Violet Orcas in eighth, and the Aqua Deer as last. This would be a shock for Rill, the captain of his squad, and he would ask Asta how he had gotten all his stars. Anyway, everyone would be cheering for the Magic Knights, as this was a night to be celebrated. The Clover Kingdom's king, this being King Clover, would make his way to the stage, Julius announcing his arrival, and this would be when we finally meet Augustus Kier Clover, the 13th. After the crowd cheers softly, Augustus shouts at them about how great he is, and Julius would ask the king to calm down. The king in this version is just as jealous of Julius as he is in the original, with him gritting his teeth on how Julius is more popular than he is. He would think of a way to try and win back more of the people's support. The king announces to the crowd that they have found the headquarters of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, and will be launching an all-out strike with a new squad called the Royal Knights. The king reveals that they'll be holding an exam to choose the best magic knights of each squad to enter, creating one massive elite squad. And then the Eye of the Midnight Sun will fall. The crowd would cheer much louder now, and the king would think that he is definitely winning the people over and selling Julius's own plan, this being the Wizard King having come up with the Royal Knights himself. Asta would comment absentmindedly that the Wizard King and all the Magic Knights are way more amazing than the actual king. Asta just murmuring about how the king is pretty much the worst up here on the stage would cause Julius and the captain, alongside Yuno, to worry, as this would cause the king to freak out and order Asta to be put to death, Elizabeth face-palming. Julius would step in, the Wizard King, and ask the king to forgive, since both Asta and Yuno may one day become shields to protect the king, and he would then once again ask the king to forgive Asta. Julius then grabbing Asta's head and telling him to not be so hot-headed, thinking of his father and how he pretty much said the same thing all those years ago, almost getting beheaded himself. Anyway, the crowd would have high hopes for the Royal Knights and the Magic Knights to display their power and protect the kingdom. The crowd cheers for the Wizard King, and the king would be again jealous of Julius. And with that, the ceremony would come to an end, with the Wizard King meeting up with Asta and Yuno, telling them to try their best in the Royal Knights exam and gain that opportunity to go fight the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Asta would sigh, thinking he's just going to be the one to take out Licht anyway, the leader, since last time he almost killed him anyway, unless he got really that much stronger. Asta would have no idea as the day comes to a close, before the exams would begin for the Royal Knights, that he'd be fighting someone much, much more powerful than Licht, than any of the elves. He'd be fighting someone of his own race, in fact. A demon working under his own father, a demon called Zagreus. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next part for What If Asta Was Meliodas' son. Sorry again for this taking so long to come out. Make sure to hit the like button, comment below your thought, and subscribe to my channel for more videos from me. I'll be posting more What Ifs coming out tomorrow, but it'll probably be another slow week just because final exams are coming up for pretty much everyone. And yeah, I think after that I'll be getting back to my more rigorous posting schedule. Once again, sorry for everything, but I hope this little bit of a longer part should be helpful. And once again, I'll be trying to post another 2 or 3 parts of this series so I can get up to the end of the Elf arc. But yeah, that pretty much covers it. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and if you have any questions, be sure to comment them down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.